This series between the Memphis Grizzlies and Golden State Warriors is getting interesting. So coming up, I'm going to tell you why. The Warriors now, without Gary Payton II, need to find an answer for Ja Morant, or the Grizzlies could be in position to win this series. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, DeMichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal. And today I'm riding solo. No Sean Coleman with me today, but a lot to talk about with this Grizzlies team, with the Warriors. This series, for one, it has been very fun. It's been entertaining and everything in between, but it's been a little pushy, a little edgy too. The biggest thing I think yet from the edginess side is Gary Payton II being injured after being hit in the back of the head by Dylan Brooks on what was deemed a flagrant 2 foul, and Brooks was ejected from the game. So Gary Payton has fractured his elbow. Multiple reports indicated that he's now out 3 to 5 weeks, which puts him out for the rest of this series and possibly the next if the Warriors advance. So they're hoping, the hope is that he would be back for the NBA Finals appearance if the Warriors are to make it that far. But we're talking about right now. And the right now is Gary Payton was so crucial to the Warriors and what they are doing that he was inserted in the starting lineup to guard Ja Morant. Gary Payton left game 2 with an injury, and Ja Morant scored 47 points, tied his playoff career high, and quite frankly looked unstoppable, even in the fourth quarter when the team knew he was driving the basketball, even when he was playing with blurred vision in one of his two eyes. So the question now becomes, who from Golden State gets the Ja Morant assignment? But before we get to that, we first thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen every morning and every day. You can follow me on Twitter at DeMichaelC. Make sure you're subscribing to our work. You're commenting if you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube. But make sure you're listening and following everywhere else as well. So that's the Google podcast app, Apple Podcast app, wherever you listen or watch Locked On Grizzlies. We appreciate you, and we are grateful for you following our coverage. So back to this Gary Payton II being out. What does it mean? We're going to start here because this is where we start. Before we get into the matchups, let's talk about, no, we're going to start with the matchups, and then we'll get into all the sidebar stuff because I think the matchup is the most important part. And at the end of the day, basketball injuries happen. This one, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but Gary Payton Jr., he's no longer in this series. So who's that next guy for Golden State? I think it's Andrew Wiggins. The benefit that the Warriors have had so far with Andrew Wiggins is he's been one of their better rebounders, and they're playing this small ball lineup. If Andrew Wiggins is guarding Ja Morant, that's going to take him out of a rebounding position a lot of times. So now you're depending on Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, potentially Jordan Poole, and Draymond Green, if that's the starting five. That was the second half starting five in that game. But they could go back bigger with Kevon Looney. We'll see how Golden State decides to do that. But either way it goes, Andrew Wiggins seems like an ideal matchup. Klay Thompson, great historical defender. I've seen him guard, Damian Lillard, James Harden, all of these guys. But post injury, Klay Thompson, and make sure you tune in tomorrow as well. We're gonna have our crossover episode with the Locked On Warriors. So tune in for that tomorrow because it'll be interesting to see how the people in the Bay feel about Klay Thompson and his injury situation and how it impacts his defense. Watching these first two games, again, I haven't seen him as much as the Warriors have, but I've seen him these two games. I've seen him periodically throughout the season, and of course in the matchups against the Grizzlies. He does not look like that same defender, and that's expected. Achilles injury, torn ACL, back-to-back, missed completely 2 seasons. That's expected. But the thing is, pre-injury, you threw Klay Thompson on Ja Morant, no questions, no ifs, and buts about it. Ja Morant has had his way at times with Klay Thompson, especially going downhill, where thought it was funny. The two had a breakaway transition play in game 2, and Klay Thompson's kind of running right by Ja Morant, and he's in front of him. He looks like he's going to contest, and Morant takes off from maybe 1-2 steps inside the free throw line, and he just rises up with 2 hands. And Klay Thompson, he made one of those, what do we call them, business decisions, where he just slides out of the way. But that's a big question. Who on that Golden State team will get Ja Morant as his main defender? Of course, they're probably going to throw more guys at him. There's some guys off the bench that I think, will get into that mix as well. But Gary Payton's absence completely shifts things from that perspective. But yeah, why is he absent? Well, Dillon Brooks, very hard foul. There was a flagrant 2 in game 1 with Draymond Green. There was a flagrant 2 with Dillon Brooks in game 2. So I've seen some people say, "Oh, he deserves a suspension" and things like that. I don't know if we're gonna say he should be suspended. I've seen some people use the logic that he basically missed an entire game in this game, and I think that is a reasonable thing to consider when you talk about suspending a player for a game in the playoffs, because I'm sure some of our listeners here are football fans. So let's take you to college football. In college football, there's a targeting rule, right? There's a targeting rule where when a player is deemed for targeting, he misses I believe it's the first half of the next game or something like that. He misses the first half of the next game. So no, if he's deemed for targeting in the second half, he misses the first half of the next game. But basically, where I'm getting at with this is targeting in the first quarter and targeting in the fourth quarter have completely different impacts on how much time a player misses and when a player misses, time throughout of a game. And it's the same way with the flagrant 2 foul. Draymond Green's flagrant came late in the second quarter. Dillon Brooks' flagrant came early in the first quarter, about 9 minutes left. I think that has to be factored in. Of course, the reason this is getting as much attention as it is in terms of a suspension is because Steve Kerr, never seen Steve Kerr that livid in person myself. And I talked to some of the Warriors beat writers. He was really cranked up after that foul. And I mean, I watched him sitting courtside at that game at FedEx Forum as he went back and forth with some Grizzlies player. He had some words, just Jaren Jackson Jr. as he was walking to the bench, and he was talking in the direction of, Dillon Brooks and just talking in the direction of the rest of those guys and Klay Thompson. He was calling, BS on that play as well. So the Warriors clearly weren't happy. Draymond Green had his things to say. The Warriors have big voices in the NBA because they've been here, they've done that, and you know, at the end of the day, they're one of the more marketable teams in the league. They have big voices. They have all been vocal about this. I think that has to play a factor in. I mean, I don't know if it has to play a factor, but I think it will play a factor. Let me just say that. But one more thing to consider: go back and watch the tape. Go back and watch the tape of game two. And one thing you might see is Jordan Poole, who was not inserted into the game at that time, kind of crept onto the court. He was well onto the court. And Grizzlies fans, some of you will remember this. This backfired on the Grizzlies before because once a player leaves the bench during those type of situations, that's an automatic suspension. Grizzlies fans, you'll remember in New York, Jay Crowder had the altercation. What happened? Jaren Jackson Jr. leaves the bench, 1-game suspension. If Dillon Brooks is to get suspended, I will say this: there's a decent chance Jordan Poole, who started the second half for Golden State, who had 31 in game one, who has been just an offensive force, in the second half of this season for the Warriors, there is a chance he could be suspended, the automatic 1 game for entering onto the court. The most famous example of them all that a lot of you basketball fans will remember is in the mid 2000s when the Suns played the Spurs in that series where Robert Horry hip checked Steve Nash he hip checked Steve Nash, and Steve Nash falls down, he hits the deck real hard, and Amari Stoudemire comes onto the court and gets suspended. That's the most notable example that a lot of people remember because it changed the course of that series. But keep that in mind. There is a chance, because Jordan Poole, I went back and watched it, he was on the court. We'll see how the NBA plays it. And there's a chance he could be suspended just as well as Dillon Brooks in this series. But before we get to that game, there are going to be some time. There's a lot of time off. And in that time off, Grizzly players, they need it. They need the rest. So we're going to talk more about how this time off can really help these Grizzlies players. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about how you can know which players to bet on when that time comes, and that's Bet Online. That's the number one spot to go to make your bets. BetOnline.net is the place. And look, not just basketball, because the MLB baseball is back, and today we have some legit matchups, some pitcher duels. For me, I'm a big Shohei Ohtani guy. He's on the mound. He's usually good for a good 5 innings, 2 or 3 earned runs or less. There's also some other big pitchers on the mound. BetOnline is your place to go. Go bet that over or under on what do you think those pitching matchups will do in terms of the over and under, in terms of the runs per game. But it's not just baseball too. Boxing, MMA, and then, of course, NBA action. So BetOnline is the best place to go to make those bets. Again, so that's betonline.net. So make sure that you're also tuning in to the Locked On NBA Big Board. See, with Locked On NBA Big Board, it's draft season. It's draft season, and this even the Grizzlies fans, you can get a taste of this too, because you should have 2 first-round draft picks in this draft. Possibly, there's a very small chance there's 3, but bank on 2 of them. And then with Locked On NBA Big Board, now it's getting time of the year where they're going to break down the biggest prospects. They're going to break down everything going on in terms of how the NBA draft board is shaping up, who fits where, and everything in between that. It's almost draft season. Get into it now, because at the end of the day, as soon as this season ends, the draft is right there. So Locked On NBA Big Board is where you go listen to that, available everywhere you get your Locked On podcast too, and wherever you get your podcasts, period. But yeah, these Grizzlies, those 3 days, off in between games, and I say off because you know they'll be working, they'll be practicing and doing everything that they need to do. But this is a crucial time. This is a crucial time. When the schedules came out and people saw, game one and game two, they skipped a day, and then there was a big gap. I don't think people really appreciated what that time was going to do for the Grizzlies. From the jump, I knew that, that could be big for Steven Adams, for one, and then that could be big for any players who get roughed up during this series. And that's exactly the situation Memphis is in. Ja Morant, for one, we'll start there and touch on it really briefly, because I've seen some people make the odd jokes like they do with LeBron James and question just the validity of how much it mattered. But from up close, what I saw with Ja Morant was, at the end of the third quarter, I will say this: he legit did have an issue with his left eye. He was walking up the court. He was fumbling with it. He was kind of flickering it as he was going up the court. And when the ball went in his hands in that last possession, when he was just sitting over there in the right wing, just pretty much standing there, and he kind of threw it back to Tyus Jones, who had to force up a shot really quick, it was because Morant had no clue how much time was on the shot clock because he couldn't see it. Came in the fourth. He said he still couldn't see really good out of his left eye, but he mentioned that he still had one more good eye and he has 20/20 vision. So with that being said, he finished the game strong, as we saw, scored the last 15 points for the Grizzlies in that game to win. So all things considered, when it comes to Ja Morant, I think his eye will be fine. You get that looked at, but they have time to get that fixed as well. But a bigger thing is Desmond Bain. Desmond Bain's situation is going to be really telling going into Saturday, because here's the thing. Desmond Bain is healthy Saturday. Everyone breathe in, breathe out, and this series is going to be a battle. If Desmond Bain is still lingering with the back soreness on Saturday, that's a problem, because at that point, it's probably not going to go away. That's what I would take from that. If he's still dealing with it come Saturday, it's not going away. So Desmond Bain's situation is a little bit different. And through this series, for one, Taylor Jenkins talked about getting those 32 minutes in game two out of Desmond Bain and how important they were. And they were, because this is what happened. When Desmond Bain was on that floor, even when he wasn't making the three-point shots, they weren't leaving him open. Golden State had a man attached to him all game long, making sure he didn't get an open look. So more than anything, even if he was just a decoy, he did his part in getting other people opportunities. And that's all you can ask for, with a guy like Desmond Bain, even if he's, limited in a way. But there's some time off, because that's a thing where Grizzlies fans, you can perceive that as a positive to this point. Wow, Ja Morant is cooking. Imagine what it's going to look like when Ja Morant's going downhill and Desmond Bain's making three-pointers like he did in the first round, and, getting his quick release off and using his footwork to get to some nice step-back three-pointers and things like that. Those opportunities could present themselves if he gets back healthy. And the last one is Steven Adams. 3 more days for Steven Adams to have a better chance at clearing health and safety protocols. Now, when I always talk about health and safety protocols, you always got to mention that it's different for everyone. Some people can test right out of it 3-4 days, no problem. Some people 2 weeks. Steven Adams, right now, where we are, remember, he missed game 6 of that last series on Friday against the Timberwolves. That's when we found out he was in protocols on that Friday. So you just do the simple math. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 8 days. So a few days have passed, you know, since we seen Steven Adams and had any mention of him. For one, he didn't travel, with the team. And tomorrow we'll find out if he's going to travel to Golden State with the team. That's going to be a big indicator as well on his current status. But if Steven Adams comes back, this is why it's big. Because a lot of people say, he's going to have to get worked in and all of that. But Steven Adams wasn't playing 30 minutes anyway. Brandon Clark has been the closer pretty much. I got here covering the Grizzlies in December as the Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal. He's been the closer that entire time. Brandon Clark, that is. Steven Adams starts, gives you 25 minutes around that time, and he dominates. The Warriors have played this small ball lineup, Draymond Green at center, and quite frankly, they've had a lot of success because the Grizzlies haven't had a rebounding advantage. And Taylor Jenkins has talked a lot of this series about physicality. Well, where that comes into play more than any time, is rebounding, according to Taylor Jenkins. And the Grizzlies have not controlled the boards the way you expect in this series for the number one rebounding team in the NBA against a Warriors team that was not at the top of the league in rebounding. So all things considered, the one guy who can completely shift that is Steven Adams. Him coming back, because right now Taylor Jenkins is kind of stuck with his guns, starting Xavier Tillman, who's provided some, sparks at moments, but Xavier Tillman is not the rebounder that Steven Adams is. If he comes back, potentially on the road, the Grizzlies have a good chance to at least steal one of those games, get back home court, and it's on. It's on because right now Golden State still has home court. The Grizzlies, if they're unable to get back home court, it's going to be a 3-1 series. So right now, that should be the focus. And Steven Adams is a big, he's a big part of that. If he can get back, he's a big piece to that puzzle in terms of getting the Grizzlies over that hump and winning a game on the road. But speaking of big pieces, if you have a car, you have a truck, there are a lot of big pieces that make that thing work. And rockauto.com is where you go to get any of the pieces for your cars for very reliably low prices. See, some people, you're paying 30, 40%, even 100% more for the same parts at some of these chain stores or car dealership places that you can get at a more affordable rate with Rock Auto. So I'm talking brake parts, tail lamps, motor oils, and even something like just a new carpet in your car. Rock Auto has you covered. So again, go to rockauto.com right now and see what parts they have for your needs, and write Locked On in there in the tell us about you section. How did you hear about us section? And you'll get those amazingly reliable, low prices, all the parts you ever need. That's rockauto.com. So now, with the Grizzlies, they're in a good situation. Split 1-1. You got the momentum. The Warriors don't have an answer for your best player, Ja Morant. But the situation could have even been better. Gonna tell you why. Zaire Williams, you saw what he did in game 2. Zaire Williams wanted to play in game 1. He wanted to play. The health of, the team physicians, they held him back. Zaire Williams said he wanted to play. They told him no. Rest up for one more game. Reminder, Grizzlies lost game 1 by 1 point. John Conchar, who has done great things this season, but as we see, Zaire Williams is clearly ahead of him in the rotation. John Conchar played 8 minutes in game one, -10. Those minutes would have went to Zaire Williams. And if game two was any indication, that could have been a big swing. This kid, Zaire Williams, he's here. He's important to what the Grizzlies are doing, and he's a big part of the future here. He's a big part of it. Game two, he makes 4 3-pointers, and you question, you wanna play, the negative side on this. Okay, yeah, he's probably not gonna make 4 threes in a game in Chase Arena. That's probably true. But one thing about basketball, defense travels. We've seen him have big games on the road. Hello, Madison Square Garden. Career high night. I believe he had 20, 21, 22 points in Madison Square Garden. He's had big performances on the road. And now we do all this talking about Dillon Brooks. If Dillon Brooks is unable to play because of a suspension or anything like that, you know who starts? It's going to be Zaire Williams. Zaire Williams is going to get that start. He started the second half in that last game. And some people, with Dillon Brooks, he forces the issue on offense a lot, and some people just aren't fine with that. And as you've seen, he's shooting around 34% so far during this playoff run. So you take the good with the bad sometimes with Dillon Brooks. Zaire Williams, you're not going to get many forced shots. You're just not. You're going to get spot-up shots. He's going to show those little flashes of creativity that he has. And then he's going to get out in transition. He's going to get some putback dunks. He's going to catch some alley hoops because he's running the wing, like a wide receiver running a post route or a fly route. And he makes things happen. Long arms. Defensively, Taylor Jenkins really trusts this guy. I wrote a story with Commercial Appeal, and it was actually after a game against the Warriors. I think he just likes playing the Warriors, maybe. He had 17 points, and this was, I believe, January 9th, January 11th, whenever they played the Warriors there in January, and he got that start, had a huge game. Huge game, and he guarded Steph Curry. He was the primary assignment for Steph Curry that night. And I remember talking to Ja Morant after that game, and Ja Morant was like, you should have seen, how much preparation he put in for this moment. Preparation is a big part of Zaire Williams' game. He talks about watching film almost as much as Taylor Jenkins talks about it. Taylor Jenkins is a coach. Zaire Williams is a 20-year-old rookie. So I'll say that again, because I want you to really hone in what I just said. Zaire Williams, unprovoked, talks about watching film almost as much to the media as Taylor Jenkins, a coach. He says it's helped him more than anything, just that mental perspective. He talked about it in January when he completely looked different than he did, pre-January as a rookie. He talked about just watching that film, changing his game. And the Warriors now are so happen to be one of the teams he has the most film on. And that's why this is a good situation for him, because he played against the Warriors multiple times in the regular season. He had really good success against the Warriors, like that January matchup. Zaire Williams is important in this series. So, one, he's a wing. That means he's another guy. Even if Dillon Brooks is on the floor, there was the question when Dillon Brooks was on the floor, who was going to be the guy that could guard Jordan Poole when he gets hot. There was a possession where Zaire Williams started out on Curry, got switched on to Jordan Poole, held his own. He's a guy who you can depend on with those long arms to kind of, bother those guys. He's slim right now. He's 20 years old. He's going to grow into that adult body. It's going to come. But that's why he's important. We talked about the transformation since January. His return is big. It's a big deal. And I mentioned it before game two, and I think it just went over a lot of people's head, especially, Golden State fans. Oh, Zaire Williams, this rookie guy, he's probably not that important. Oh, He's important, all right. He is one of the key pieces. The Grizzlies' depth is huge. And Zaire Williams, potentially, if Dylan Brooks misses a game, him getting starter minutes, or just if he plays the way he did in game 2, it's going to be hard for Taylor Jenkins to keep him out of that closing lineup. We talk about a lot about how Taylor Jenkins goes with the flow of the game. He rides the flow. If Zaire Williams is playing well like that, the flow of the game is going to say, hey, look, someone's coming out of this closing lineup, and Zaire Williams is coming in it. So the Grizzlies are in a good situation. They still have another off day after this, and I believe they're going to travel. They're traveling today to go to the Bay Area, and then Friday they'll practice or potentially practice from Golden State at Chase Arena, and then Saturday it's showtime. It's showtime, so they'll have more time, to figure out some things, how they want to do things, and there's a lot more left to find out on Dylan Brooks' status and everything in between there, including Jordan Poole. So, but before you go, make sure that you are listening in to Locked On NBA as well, where our experts are giving their opinions on some of the biggest and best things going on in the NBA. And you get it all in 30 minutes. That's the best part. You listen to Locked On NBA. You have a great idea of what's going on in NBA, the best breaking news, the best coverage of each playoff series, and everything going on around the playoffs. There's always Laker news, and there's always news, on some of these other big market teams like, the New York Knicks, and then there's other new teams, the Pelicans and the Spurs, all these teams who barely miss, the postseason as well. So Locked On NBA, that's where you get the best coverage of all of that in just 30 minutes. But we appreciate you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're tuning in tomorrow to our crossover episode with the Locked On Warriors, where we break down and bounce ideas off of each other's heads of how these teams match up against each other. It's an exciting series already. It's going to be an even more exciting series. It's just getting started. 2 games in. Both of the games have been tight. I'm looking forward to it. I hope y'all are too. But until next time, I'll see you. I'm DeMichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, host of Locked On Grizzlies, and I'll see you again tomorrow.